Hello and welcome to the EMS Handoff podcast. This is David, and along with my co-host Bradley Dean and Eric McCullough, we are your source for all things EMS. We have a great episode coming on an off day for us normally, but we love these special episodes. And today we're actually here to celebrate a great group of individuals, and they are the ones that actually provide the very, very first EMS handoff of every call. So this is a great opportunity not only to recognize some great individuals, but talk about things from their side as well. But as we do, before we get started, let's go ahead and kick it over to Nashville. Eric McCullough, how's your week?
Oh, it's going good. I think this is pretty awesome. We don't ever get a chance to really talk about dispatchers much because we talk a lot about EMS, and we always forget, hey, you know what? We got to have somebody send us. And I know a lot of people probably roll their eyes at this because they're like, but they send us the bad calls. Like, yeah, they do that too. But this is awesome to be able to partake in this week.
And thank you very much, Eric. Giving away the clues just a little bit early. I tried to be cryptic, and you went straight towards it.
Oh no, let's just go right into it.
So we're gonna go.
It's like they see us at 6:59 a.m. They're like, that crew, they need a call.
Well, we're gonna mute you now because you're giving away too much. We can't get there just yet. We're gonna go straight to Bradley, and guys, if you would go ahead and dispatch Eric on something great. Bradley Dean, how's North Carolina going?
It's going great. It's funny you mentioned that because my phone from Communications is ringing right now, but I'm not going to answer it because I'm not on duty. So
you're busy. Tell them you're busy. We're out of service. Can't go. So, all right. Before we introduce our guests this afternoon, we're going to introduce and thank our podcast partner, the Journal of Emergency Medical Services. Been a tremendous partner to the EMS Handoff since we started this reboot series. While the EMS Handoff remains your source for all things EMS in the podcast verse, GEMS has been an industry leader for many years. Go by their website at gems.com. Visit our other podcasters, see all the EMS Handoff episodes, and make sure that you go to their EMS Today podcast platforms on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Don't forget to reach out to Pursuit Outfitters as well. The Pursuit company holds the EMS Handoff apparel line. We've got our T-shirts, long sleeve shirts, and hoodies. It is getting warm summer. There's still some places out there that's a little bit cold. Make sure you get them. PursuitOutfitters.com/EMS Handoff. Get the color of your choice and send those pictures to Eric on that social media platform. But because today's a special episode and they don't like it when we goof around on the radio very much because they have to get us to the next important thing, Bradley Dean, go ahead and introduce our next guest.
So today we have several guests, but in the process of introducing them, I want to make sure that people understand that 911 are the true first responders. And today, we're joined by Randy, John, and Ollie. I'm going to let Randy introduce them. I'm going to introduce Randy real quick. Randy Beeman is the current sitting chapter president for NENA in North Carolina, which is the National Emergency Number Association. They are an organization whose mission is to foster technological advancement, availability, and implement a universal emergency telephone number in the United States. And he does a lot with carrying the mission forward. He's been in local government for over 40 years. He's been a paramedic for 30, and he's currently the director of Durham Emergency Communications in Durham, North Carolina. Randy, thank you for joining us. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Bradley, and all for thinking about us this special week of celebration. And yes, thank you for recognizing the North Carolina chapter of NENA. I am the sitting president, as you just stated. And it is with great pleasure that I work with the members and the different organizations. We have about 127 PSAPs in the state of North Carolina, that is public safety answering points. So it is a privilege to represent many of those in their membership, in their day-to-day activities as we express the need and continue the good fight of continuing to improve our technology. So just had to put a little plug in there for NENA. But today is a very special day. It's not about directors of emergency services. It's about the people, the boots on the ground that do it every day. And, if they have a bad day, they come right on back for more. And truly, as you said, Bradley, they are the real first responders. They're the true first responders in the industry. I tell that all the time to my elected officials, and I even tell that to the good firefighters, to the men and women that are out there fighting the fires, taking care of our residents. Same thing with the medics, same thing with law enforcement. And I challenge them sometimes by saying, you know what? You really wouldn't be going anywhere if no one was on the end of the telephone to take the call, to take care of all that business, to tell you where you need to go to take care of that emergency. So I'll get a few eye rolls or a few sneers or snides, but that's okay because it is a big family at the end of the day. So enough about talking about me and my philosophy, but I have two very special people among the staff here at Durham Emergency Communications Center. My operations manager is John Zimmerman, and he's been here for more than a number of years. I don't want to tell on him too bad. He can express that. And then Ollie. Ollie is one of those very special folks that I believe and I've observed and watched and heard. And you guys mentioned it just a little while ago when you were talking about the recording 911 when the World Trade Center event. But just the voice of calmness and just the voice of reasoning. And no matter how high you stack it or how wide it gets, or, it's kind of like last person standing. Telecommunicators are right there till however long you need them, and they're the voice of reason. So I would like for John and Ollie to talk about themselves and give some examples if they will.
Ollie, would you like to go first?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay. I am John Zimmerman, Operations Administrator here at Durham Emergency Communications. Thank you all very much for honoring the Telecommunicator Week, National Telecommunicator Week. It is a special week for us, and it has gained traction over the last few years. Early on in my career, and probably Ollie could speak to the same, it was something that didn't get much attention. So we really do appreciate that, because so oftentimes the job that is done in the 911 center and dispatch centers across the country is so under-recognized until it's needed, or until we do something wrong, until we get that negative press. So we really appreciate the chance to sit in and to join in the conversation today. I have been with Durham here for 21 years. I started in January of 2000. Ollie came just a few months later than me. I believe, Ollie, you started in November that same year. So you're approaching your 21-year mark before too long here. I started out, on shift as a dispatcher, call taker, moved up to assistant supervisor, then supervisor, and now operations administrator. Still have lots of experience and working in the 911 center. Just about every week I'm in there performing duties still, even though I'm in the middle management role right now. So again, thank you so much. Look forward to the time that we can spend together today, and I will turn it over to Ollie.
All right. Thank you guys for inviting us. Like John said, I have been here for 20 years. Started out as a communicator, moved from communicator to mentor, from mentor to filling in for a supervisor, and then becoming a full supervisor. I want to say maybe three years, maybe. I really don't know. I done lost count. So, but thank you.
All right. So as we've alluded, first off, thank you to Randy, to John, and to Ollie for coming on today. Very short notice. We got this together, and that's exactly what telecommunicators do when the stuff hits the fan. They go into work. And so this week we're actually celebrating National Public Safety Telecommunications Week, and taking that one step. A lot of people in this profession simply think about when the lights and sirens go off, and responding to calls. That's everything you take a look at. But there's actually quite a bit that is done beforehand. And it's what makes everything else work. If one thing is off in that point before, so from the handoff crew, myself, Bradley, and Eric, we're going to start off by simply thanking you guys for making sure that we get to do the job that we're hired to do, which is taking care of the public. So everybody that we're dealing with, from that initial 911 call all the way up to when they treated at the hospital and subsequently discharged, a lot of that comes from you guys. So again, thank you to Durham, all your team there, as well as telecommunicators across the country. So let's get into this just a little bit. We're going to talk about what those telecommunicators are actually dealing with, what their job is. Everybody thinks they just hit a button and tell you to go on your call for the 20th call in your 24-hour period. But that's not really it. There's a ton of stuff that's going on. So I want to point this to John first. We're going to put Randy to the back just a little bit. And really, we're going to spend a lot of time talking to Ollie as we get here. But let's go ahead from your role as the operations administrator. Let's talk about what is 911 and what are public safety telecommunicators.
Absolutely. So to put it in EMS terms and really oversimplifying it, 911 is just a tremendous program of triage, prioritization of calls coming in. You've probably heard before that a very small percentage of the calls that we get over 911 are actually true life and death emergencies. We're dealing with a tremendous amount of calls that are absolutely not emergencies, life and death emergencies, and everything in between. So the job of a telecommunicator dispatcher is really one of triage and really having to be well-versed in many different disciplines, not specifically EMS or medical triage, but that's part of it. And of course, that does depend on the jurisdiction and how the jurisdiction is set up. We here in Durham are a consolidated center. We dispatch for police, fire, and medical. Some dispatch centers are set up to just dispatch police or just dispatch fire or medical. So we take the call here. We're the primary safety answering point for Durham City and County, and then we dispatch everything except for Durham County Sheriff. So back to the role of that call taker. When that call first comes in, it's a matter of taking a statement from someone where we only have audio. That's the only thing that we have to rely on. You don't have any of your other senses to determine what is going on and the severity. That's very important because people in emergent situations, most people think that their situation is of highest priority because they're the one at that moment experiencing it. But we all would agree that someone who has stopped breathing or has agonal breathing, for example, is a much more critical or a higher priority than someone who has cut their finger. So even though blood may be spurting out the finger and that person's hysterical, the job of the telecommunicator is to prioritize, to ask the questions that's going to correctly prioritize that call. That's one of the things I wanted to touch on, is just so many times the questions that are asked are misinterpreted for either not caring or delaying the call. But the protocols that we're certified in are so integral and so important to classifying and properly prioritizing those calls that they don't delay the call. They actually, the conversation is happening while someone else in the room, usually it's someone else in the room, is dispatching the call, getting the proper help on the way. But just in a very big picture sense, that call taker is just the triage, and they have to be able to decipher, relying on what that person who's at the scene can tell them, how serious that situation is, so that we can do our best to send the appropriate help.
And so from your role, and I'm going to transition to Ollie. I know Bradley's going to have a follow-up here as well, but one of the things as a communicator, you have to understand all of the resources that you have within your responsibility. So, while you're responsible as a supervisor for the team that you're leading there at Durham 911, ultimately you have hands-on, as John was saying, to the local police, fire, EMS, across the city and the county aspect. So there's a tremendous amount of resources that you have. How do you transition that emergency into the deployment of those assets to make sure the right things get to the right places at the right time?
Was that question still for me?
I'm going Ollie on that one.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I thought that was a John question. I'm sorry. Can you say it one more time?
So no worries. So ultimately my goal is to, you're responsible on the daily as a supervisor for the crews that are there within the 911 center, but ultimately your all's reach touches everybody in the city and the county. So your responsibility is knowing all of the assets that are within the city and county from police, fire, and EMS. So how do you take that information from that initial call, like John was saying, if somebody hysterical, they've cut off a finger, or somebody's having a heart attack, not responding, those kind of things. How do you take that rapid aspect into action and putting the right resources to get to the right person at the right time?
How do we do that? I guess because our calls are prioritized. So nothing far as fire and EMS holds at all. Once that call comes over, it's immediately dispatched. If you don't have the resources, there are times where we may run out of medic trucks and don't have the resources. Then before we know that we're not going to have the resource, we reach out to the other outside agencies or counties and have them have an EMS unit stand by for us. And then once units get on scene and assess if they feel like they need another piece of equipment from maybe not their station or maybe from another county, another agency, they'll let us know, hey, can you call so-and-so? I need a brush truck out here, and go from there.
So it is not only knowing those resources, but also who to call and when. Like you said, sometimes you have to call other agencies and stuff like that. So you're really, really the entry point. So I had a lot of conversations yesterday talking about EMS kind of being the front door to healthcare anymore. We find ourselves picking a lot of people and taking them into the hospital. So especially in rural areas, an EMS provider may be their first access to healthcare, but really, that public safety aspect is you guys. So the access point or the reach is through there. So in this case, we have you all as part of the public safety team. Is that right, Randy?
It sure is. It is, David. And that is key because, we are kind of we are, as I said earlier, the first responder. So we have the equipment to manage those type calls because we have a CAD system, computer aided dispatch. So, and within that, we've got response plans. It tells us which units are where, and the call type, as Ollie was just talking about, when those priority type calls are coming through, and depending on the local area or the jurisdiction, then these are aids to helping us get the resources that are needed to the very most efficient, effective manner of handling that type of emergency or that type of call. And as Ollie alluded to, no jurisdiction has all the resources that they'll need all the time because of depending on the magnitude of event. We started out this session talking about 911, especially in that horrible September morning in New York City, one of the largest cities, in our country, with a lot of resources, but they didn't have enough resources. So it is that collaborative effort of neighboring jurisdictions as we respond to those emergencies. But ultimately, you're on it that. It begins with us, and we start that mission and continue to build upon that mission as the assets are needed to take care of it.
Well, thank you. So John, we're going to touch on your 21 years of experience here. We're not going to go to Randy. He's been around much longer than that. We're going to come a little bit more into this and take a look. So I remember. Growing up, one of the things I saw on the back of our telephone at that point in time, we had a 7-digit phone number that you would have to call. And whenever you move to a different area, just maybe a couple blocks down the road, that 7-digit number may have changed. And now everybody has this universal number, 911 you call, gets you to the public safety answering points. Kind of go through just a little bit of the transitions that we've seen in your career since you've gotten here and the adaptations you've had to make. Absolutely.
When I joined Durham in January of 2000, we had 911 at the time, which I know you know. The 7-digit number days, thankfully we're behind us. But at the time, I've seen a lot change in 21 years. It used to be that we had a very old, what we would term of now, very old small monitors. The CAD or computer-aided dispatch system we had at the time was much, much different, where we track all of the calls and all the unit status. One of the primary things that first pops into my mind is the telephone technology that has changed over 21 years. Ollie will remember this as well. It used to be that we would get a mobile phone call in those early years in the early 2000s, and you would get a readout on your screen, what we call the ANI-ALI, automatic number identifier, automatic location identification. You get a readout of the phone number. But if that person didn't know exactly where they were, and if you weren't familiar enough to maybe pick up on landmarks or things that they were describing, there was really nothing you could do to get help to that person back in those early days. Now what we have federally mandated, I'm trying to think of the right word, but it's federally mandated that the location information is provided by mobile carriers. So that technology has just tremendously improved. Now to where we are now, we have a company called Rapid SOS that can immediately, as soon as you hit 911 on your phone, on your mobile phone, immediately sends information from your mobile phone, including anything from GPS to Wi-Fi information, any sensor in that phone to the location, that we can and now access that location information so much easier. And that has been able to save so many lives than in those early days. I think about a time where one of the calls that sticks out in my memory, and of course, EMS has all kind of war stories as well. But one of the calls that sticks out in my mind is northern Durham County. We have a lot of just rural areas. The city continues to expand northward, but right now we still have a lot of rural areas. And we had a small private aircraft crash out in the very rural areas of Durham County in the woods. And because of the location information, that's the only way that we were able to direct responders from fire and EMS to get back to patients, one unfortunately deceased, but this man who was on the phone the entire time in the middle of the woods out in rural Durham County, that phone location information was the only way that we could get to him. And we ended up, getting responders back there and eventually locating the airplane. So that's definitely one thing that I've seen change in mobile location technology, but just technology as a whole is just really enhancing the work that we do in emergency communications, making the work much more efficient. Not only locating callers, but the CAD systems have dramatically improved over 21 years. And the radio systems continue to improve. We used to just have the conventional radio frequencies. Now we have trunk systems that can handle so many more talk groups and just so much more flexibility than back in the conventional VHF days or UHF days. And just technology on all the fronts has improved. Another area is, of course, our phone lines used to come in on just regular copper phone lines. And now that the state of North Carolina is transitioning the 127 PSAPs that Randy mentioned, we're all transitioning over to a statewide telephone network that is called ESInet. So every PSAP in North Carolina will be on a voice over IP phone network. So all those 911 calls now are coming into the centers as computer voice over IP. which tremendously gives a lot of flexibility and stability and security that we did not have before. So technology is definitely supporting and advancing the work that we do in emergency communications. And that's one of the biggest things that I've seen change throughout my career. Some of the things don't change. Pretty much the same, dealing with the types of calls and emergencies that come in, but technology for sure has changed to enhance the work that we do.
So as soon as you say the transitioning over to a voice over IP, the military side, where I'm in cyber intel, starts to think about the movie. I don't know if you've seen it, Live Free or Die Hard. I think it's the fourth in the Die Hard series, in which a cyber hacker just takes down absolutely everything. And I think at some day we're going to be like, well, I wish I had that copper back in here. It's but
that's one of the things about technology advancing. But the copper, it has its downsides too, because one of the struggles that we've had not too long ago in our brand new building here is every time it rained, something happened. And again, this building, we just moved into this building in 2018. Our administrative lines were still conventional and are at this time. So every time it rained, we would have to have somebody out in the manhole out front of the building because our lines would be crossed up. There's pros and cons either way you look at it.
Yeah, there was I'll tell you another con with this whole system back in December. I'm sure you guys have heard about the AT&T building in Nashville. Mm-hmm. It got hit. I was actually working on the ambulance that day, and our 911 calls went from we were getting calls to we got nothing. And so we had, great for us, terrible for the people, because we literally had somebody contact us through ham radio. I think they had a ham radio, and they contacted us out in the county saying, "Hey, we got our family member here. We need you to come get them." We're like, "How are you contacting us?" They got us through the phone or through the radio system. Right. But I thought that was interesting, considering everything you're talking about, enhanced 911, all these capabilities. Yet one building went down. And it's nothing. I'm not saying anything against AT&T or anything like that. But all it took was one building to go down, and most of our region was impacted by that. And there was no 911. Heck, they couldn't even call from hospital to hospital to get patients transferred over in their care.
Right. And like I said, there's pros and cons. You're absolutely correct. There's vulnerabilities no matter how the system is set up, because back in the copper days, all it took is one very well-placed backhoe, and you would lose connectivity. So, there's a lot of those things are addressed, but no system's perfect. We've been through a malware attack in the city of Durham, and along with technology comes the people who want to attack technology and abuse technology. But it's definitely been a great benefit to the whole industry of 911 for sure.
Well, I'm just curious, and I know Bradley has a question, but I just want this one first, and I'll let Bradley go. What would and this can go to Randy, John, Ollie. What would the perfect system look like? If you're if I had to design this from the ground up as a telecommunicator, what would that kind of look like? That might not be a good answer. You might not be able to answer.
Oh, no. I'll grab it. I'll grab the tire. How about that?
There we go.
I might become the tread, but I'll grab the tire.
I like it.
And I can tell you that the perfect system is one that, and this is from my EM background, and it's also an engineering phrase they use. It's last building standing. I'm going to be at least 3 deep or more in different technologies that if you take out my copper, I still got my fiber. If you take out my copper and my fiber, I still have microwave. If you take those 3 out, then I'm going to get the hammers, or as you call them, the ham operators, and or the old conventional VHF. Oh my gosh, what's that, right? Because everybody is hanging on to the 800 truncated systems, but a lot of your 800 trunk systems rely upon the fiber or the microwave. But line of sight and redundancy, and then how you build that as a hub is that you create interoperability, which we currently, and I pride us, Durham, as the first in North Carolina, that we went to a network system called the ESInet that was prototyped and designed and developed through our NC 911 group. But that is a singular platform for all 911 centers. We began the journey. We were the first in the state that went in November of 2018. And now there are 72 of the 127 PSAPs on this system. So that network has allowed us, and most recently pandemic, or say that you have a center that loses complete power, that has had some destructive force that you can no longer operate. Very quickly, you can take the calls and through the network and reroute those to a neighboring center very quickly. And the ESInet is ESInet, so Emergency Services Internet is what it is. There are many different networks across the country. North Carolina is some of the leader of the industry, but so that would be the perfect. And then I would have power supplies that would just blow your mind from, okay, if they want to get my electric grid, then they're going to have to come after my generators. If they get my electric grid and my generators, then they're going to have to go after my solar panels that are on top of my building. And then I might be getting ready to worry about my battery backup. But I'm just one of these folks that you need to think of redundancy from your telephone, your telephony, to your radio, to your comms. You must always think that way.
That's where you get. I go back to the live free or die hard again. That's where you get the mobile units after that. Again, like you said, you have the mutual aid agreements or the partnerships in which you can just hand it off to a neighboring agency because you've gone down. So I'm going to change our direction just a little bit. I'm going to point this one towards Ollie as she's sitting in the seats on a regular basis. So a lot of people talk about fire, police, and EMS. One of the things that they are dealing with frequently, used to only be associated with the military, is the fact of post-traumatic stress injury and the need for mental health resilience. The one question I never ask is, what's your worst call? Because none of us want to relive that. But it's true that all of our public safety telecommunicators are affected by the same calls because they're getting that call that infant is no longer breathing, or a police officer has been shot, or you all come really close with, it becomes a family. You know these people, even if it's just talking on the radio. There's a lot of stress injuries that affect the 911 operators too. Is that correct?
Yes.
So from your all's perspective, so from us, we're out there, we see it every day. Yours is just a little bit different thoughts, but what's some of the things that you have seen over the years that have helped some of your telecommunicators make sure and cope with and deal with those distress type calls that are associated with telecommunications?
One thing has been debriefing. Well, when we're included in the debriefing, that tends to help a lot because you get the outcome. You don't have to wonder anymore. There's no, I don't know what happened. And then you sit here and you rationalize, you go through God knows how many scenarios. Well, could this have happened? Or is this why it happened? But, if they assist us in the debriefing and include us, that normally helps. Just a supervisor or somebody going over and saying, hey, you need a break, you need to get up, you want to talk about it, giving that relief, go away for a little bit, come back. Just recently I had a coworker who was going through some things, and I took her out on the back patio and she was like, no, I don't want to talk about it. I said, no, we're going to talk about it. Talk, let it out, scream, whatever you want to do. You want to cry, I'm here. I can be your punching bag. Just let it out, because I can't let you go back in there with this feeling, because I see it, I sense it, just giving them an outlet to be. And then if that doesn't help, we have the EAP, Employment Assistance Program. I have to think about what it stands for.
So I think you made a very valuable point there. We talk about critical incident stress debriefings all the time. And a lot of times people are only talking about those crews that are out there, the EMS crews, fire, law enforcement that have seen that or experienced it. But a lot of times that point, as we were talking about really before, everybody thinks that call starts when the ambulance or the fire truck or the cruiser goes out with the lights and sirens on. But you all have been dealing with it for a period of time before. So I think you make a very valid point that when we talk about mental health resilience, that it's not just the responders, that you all as public safety professionals should be included in those calls or those debriefing situations. So that actually brings up a very good point that Bradley wants to ask about and kind of talk about and see what we can do something about. So Bradley.
Yeah. So Ali, I'm going to ask you this question because you're sitting in the seat. Fortunately, I've had the opportunity to take the EMD class, the EFD. I have not taken the EPD. Sit in the Communication Center to see what goes on. And I'm not sure that I could do the job. It's interesting, but it's not for me. But how do you feel about the U.S. Office of Management and Budget classifying, and I'm going to say dispatchers, as clerical positions?
I don't like it. I feel like it's not, when you think, just me, maybe I'm not the only one, but when you think of clerical, you're thinking of somebody that's maybe sitting there recording, typing, or somebody saying, getting some documentation, filing it away, and they're done. But when it comes to a dispatcher, there's nothing that we do. Yeah, we may type in and hit a summary and give updates on a call. Yeah, that part is clerical, but we literally have people's lives in our hands. One little mistake that we made is somebody's life, or it could be taken away. We don't know. So, and we always have to be on our toes and quick to think and ready for the next situation. Like, you could just have an explosion that just happened, but you got to be ready for that next call. And that just might be a noise complaint. So how do you go from high to, you were constantly going high and constantly going low and back and forth. So there's more to it than just clerical. I don't like that term. Sorry.
I agree. I don't think it's clerical either. Now, I'll tell you, I've always functioned as a paramedic. My limited interaction with dispatch has been through the radios and stuff. What are some things that you think as a dispatcher would be nice for people on the streets to know about dispatchers? Because I do think that in some places there's a huge disconnect between what you guys do and what we do. It's because I know there's a lot of miscommunication, like, well, they just don't know, when it's like, I know you guys probably do. So what are some, like, maybe misconceptions or things that you just think, like, it'd be nice if ground crews kind of knew this?
To realize that we are just a messenger. We're just a messenger. We can only give you what they give us. And if we don't have it, where are we supposed to get it from? Just realize that you're there. They're going to give you, because you're in their face and you're in person, it's person to person. They're going to give you everything that you need to know. Whereas us on the phone, half the time, they don't want to talk to us. They just want somebody there at the drop of a dime, not realizing that we're not the ones coming. We're sending them, but we're not coming. We need the information to send them.
And I'd like to add to what Ollie was just saying. Years ago, I wanted the seat. We're not even going to go there, folks, because none of you all on this call were born. And Ollie's going to laugh at me, and so is John. So I started in a dispatch chair where there was no automation, folks, and it was a pad of paper, and you manually wrote each call in these big 14 by 17 sheets of paper. And that was dispatching back in the day. And you hit the old encoder to dispatch the fire service and all that stuff. But one of the things also that differentiates dispatchers is, it's not only processing that call, but if someone's not breathing or someone's bleeding or there's childbirth, then our folks are taking you step by step, that caller on the phone or that family member, telling them how to do CPR and quickly how to arrange the person, how to clear the airway. So they are almost the hands and the eyes and the ears for the medics, for the fire folks and all. And they're helping keep life present, especially on a medical call, until the paramedics get there. So it's not only answering and operating that equipment, but it's actually given, get the hands on the chest and start CPR and compression. And that is a whole lot more than a clerical person sitting at a desk. I'm passionate. You just punch my button.
Well, and that's what we like to do, because that right there is what gets advocacy going, gets individuals out there. So I was actually going to point my next question to you, Randy. The question would be towards the NENA side. So as we know from some of the other organizations in EMS and education, thing about what an EMT or an advanced EMT or a paramedic could actually do makes a significant difference. And it's just a classification on the EMS side. Tennessee is one of the first or 12th state to become essential. People didn't realize they weren't essential, didn't have to be provided for. From NENA's perspective, what does that definition or description as being clerical keep you all from getting resources to your telecommunicators? A lot of times, some of these designations may limit what resources you actually have access to.
Absolutely, it does, David. And so when you have those, when classifications are misaligned, then as an example, you just touched on one thing where we were non-essential as to vaccinations for the recent pandemic. And so just to drill a little bit deeper on that one, I even spoke to some of the local politicians in the area and the leadership saying, okay, so we're going to make sure that our first responders, fire, EMS, and law enforcement, get the needles in the arms. That's great. But if we don't have anyone to pick up and answer that phone call, then nobody else is moving. There's nothing happening. And so I can't imagine any other group being more essential than 911, the 911 family in a holistic viewpoint, because it's not only, managing the calls and taking care of the public, but it's also that interaction, just like fire, police, and law and a fire, that not only is it on the job that you're interacting with the public, but what about your families? What about your social life? And if you contract the COVID or any other pandemic disease, then you're out of commission, so you can't return to your job place, or if you do, then there's contact. So it's just a huge impact where classification will also drive health benefit. It'll also drive salary and professionalization of the individuals. They are recognized because, I think it was you, Bradley, a little while ago said that you'd done the EMD and the EFD, but not the EPD. So emergency police dispatch, emergency fire dispatch, all those are professional designations, and it's not a one-time do-all done. You are recertifying every 2 years. You're doing CPR every 2 years. You're doing the latest and upgrades of your technology. Your scores, you're being reviewed. You have to because we are an accredited organization, which I applaud and support. Everyone needs to be accredited, in my opinion, because as Ollie just said, when you have a human being's life in your hands, no, you're not physically touching them, but you're giving life-saving instructions, then you are accountable as that person. So the classification, protection for your career, your professionalism. So as to NENA, North Carolina, we are currently engaging in our local legislative group, and we are meeting with them. And it's a collaborative effort, not only the National Emergency Number Association, or NENA, but also ABCO, the North Carolina chapter, the Association of Public Communication Officers. And we are working collaboratively in support of and the push to consider our folks, our dispatchers, as professional, and that designation needs to change.
Very, very great information. So I want to toss this out just so anybody can kind of get an idea. Does anybody know just about how many public safety communicators there are in this country? That's not an I got you, I have no clue, but I know that number is rather large, probably smaller than it needs to be, but the community is probably relatively large. And I see everybody's look. So that's a research for all of our people online to go out and help us figure out how many communicators that are out there. I do know, John, I believe you said there was 126 PSAPs there in North Carolina, right?
127.
It's off by one. So sorry.
Maybe that'll be a good coin giveaway. We could make that a trivia, and whoever's the closest, based on our research, we can give them a coin.
Hey, there we go. The platinum EMS Handoff coins. Eric will get right on that. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and kind of wrap up and then kind of, again, go over the Telecommunicators Week. So we're going to give each one of you an opportunity just to kind of pass off your best thoughts, whatever you think people need to know about telecommunicators. You can send out an appreciation, whatever you want to do. We'll give you just a minute. We're going to start with Ollie first and give your last thoughts. What should everybody know about Ollie and telecommunications?
What everyone should know about me is that I love my job. I love what I do. I wouldn't have been here 20-something years if I didn't. And just know that we're here to help. We're not your enemy. Yes, we might have a lot of questions, but the questions are to help the units assess you once they arrive on scene. So just take that into account, that we're just here to help.
Excellent. How about you, John?
Absolutely. I just want to say thank you again for including us today, and what several things running through my mind as far as what I want people to know along the same lines of as what Ollie said, is that the vast majority of dispatchers and call takers around the country are in the business because we care. And I know that I can definitely say that about Randy, Ollie, and I, for sure. We definitely care. And the industry as a profession and as a professional job, we do everything we do for a reason. We're not wasting anybody's time, and we're under a tremendous amount of pressure to get the right help to the right location as quickly as possible. So there's no reason why any of us would waste time. And it's just, there's such a widespread perception that maybe 911 doesn't know what they're doing. Why are they asking me all these questions? All these perceptions that unfortunately have been fueled by bad stories or bad press. But we do care, and we want EMS, we want fire, we want police to be as successful as possible in providing that safe and healthy community that we all desire. It's a very rewarding profession, but so often those rewards are very private, because I'm the only one who knows that I made a difference today or that I saved that life today. Because as soon as the fire truck or as soon as the medic truck got that call, I was completely forgotten. So yeah, those are the kinds of things that are running through my mind and the kinds of things I think about when it comes to National Telecommunicators Week. Thank you again for including us in this conversation. We really appreciate it.
Excellent. And Randy, what about you?
So, David, to me, and both John and Ollie touched on a word that immediately comes to mind, and that is compassion and passionate. And I truly believe that telecommunicators, dispatchers, those are two traits that are a common thread throughout all communication centers in this country, which there's almost 7,000 communication centers nationally. So compassion and you know, it's great to celebrate a week and recognize and keep it in the forefront of the press and Twitter and Facebook and all the social media. But one of the things that I always remind people, and whenever we get a email of thank you to the staff or to an individual, I I make absolutely certain, and John does, and the supervisors do, that we applaud and we celebrate that person or individual. And it's a team approach. You have to have the team. Together, everyone achieves more. But when you're in the heat of the battle, you pull together and it is a family. So I want to challenge folks, not only this week, but in the days and weeks and years to come, that think about your own family, but also think about a family that is truly unified, that are answering and managing emergency calls of a complete broad spectrum, and that you are compassionate and that you share that. You share it with your church family. You share it with your neighbors. And, you know, these people, these men and women, these telecommunicators, these dispatchers, you may not even know that you're standing beside them in the grocery store, in the drugstore, wherever, but they are average men and women that have the passion and compassion that they want to do the very best job they can.
Well, that's a great message. And so let's hop over to Eric and get your final thoughts, sir.
I can tell you that as a medic, I appreciate the work that you guys do. I could not do that work. If there are either instructors or EMS professionals out there, I'd encourage you to, you know, if you have the opportunity, you should hang out at the dispatch center, even if it's just for an hour or two, just to see kind of what they have to deal with whenever it comes to dispatch and just to give a greater appreciation. I'm glad I don't have to do that. I'm more than happy to be the one that gets deployed out. So it's nice to be able to have a whole week that we can celebrate telecommunicators across the country.
And Bradley.
I just want to say thank you to all of you for joining us, and as well as our communicators here in Rowan, Davidson, where I work, because you guys dedicate your career to being the first voice that somebody hears when they're having an emergency, and probably the most important voice that nobody ever sees.
All right. Thank you for that. And as we kind of wrap up today, I'm going to pass on my appreciation to Ollie, John, and Randy all together, making up the group there in Durham, but to telecommunicators from across the country. We want to thank you for, again, providing that first EMS handoff, the part that gets us to doing the right thing. And if it wasn't for them, as Ollie was saying, you know, we would end up in the wrong place or prepared for the wrong thing. So it's each one of you guys that are out there. So I know this is coming out at the tail end of the Telecommunicators Week. So we're going to be one of the last ones to show our appreciation this week. But we want to just kind of talk about some of those things that I have mentioned throughout. Make sure that we include those organizations in our debrief. We bring in those telecommunicators. And if you're out there listening to this, show those individuals appreciations as well. We know fire stations get cookies dropped off, and EMS agencies will have a meal delivered to them by somebody. But a lot of people don't think about it because they're in a locked up building, closed off from everybody else so that they can prepare to get everything out. And they're really doing the job. So for all of you guys, thank you very much. It's just overwhelming. If I was to go in there, you all would kick me out in a heartbeat. I am the one that you send out, kind of like Eric, because I can't sit still long enough to do what you all do. So thank you all, and thank you to all the telecommunicators across the country. So we are going to go ahead and wrap up now. And as we always like to say, we do this for each and every one of you out there. But until we know what you're thinking, we don't know what to give you sometimes. So make sure to visit our website at emshandoff.com. Go to Instagram, Facebook. We're on LinkedIn as well. And give us your feedback, and make sure to also go to the GEMS platform on Apple, Google, or Spotify. Rate and review the podcast. And as we always like to say, on behalf of our co-host Eric and Bradley, this is David. Take care, stay safe, and always remember the value of your EMS handoff.